Ukrainian Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch. The testimony from Ambassador Taylor sparked an interest in a phone call the day after the president's call with the Ukrainian president. The Associated Press reports it this way: a second U.S. embassy staffer in Kyiv overheard a key cell phone call between President Donald Trump and his ambassador to the European Union, discussing the need for Ukrainian officials to pursue investigations. The second diplomatic staffer also at the table with this Foreign Service officer based in Kyiv. Current and former U.S. officials say Sondland's use of a cell phone in a public place in Ukraine to speak with anyone in the U.S. government back home about sensitive matters, let alone the president, would be a significant breach of communication security. Those are all interesting points and something that we're going to hear in the Sondland testimony. But why are we hearing about it just now? Let's bring in our panel. Washington Post columnist Marc Thiessen, Susan Friccio, chief congressional correspondent for the Washington Examiner, and Steve Clements, editor-at-large for The Hill. Marc, I mean, it's fascinating, and we will see what Sondland says, obviously building up to that testimony. But, you know, it's July 26th. This was last week that Taylor finds out about it. Isn't that a little weird? A little bit.
Well, maybe they were saving it for the big reveal in the hearing yesterday. But look, if that was their big news, they're in big trouble. Because the reality is we already knew that from the Trump phone call, that he wanted investigation. So what's new there? That someone overheard him saying what he said in the released transcript of the phone call. So look, the Democrats have a problem here, which is that polls right now show that the majority of Americans think Donald Trump did something wrong, but a minority of Americans think that he should be impeached. New Fox News poll in North Carolina, 42% support impeachment and removal. Nevada, just 43%. Nationally, it's about the same. So the burden of proof is on the Democrats to draw blood, to make something happen. There's a rule in blackjack: the tie goes to the dealer. In impeachment, the tie goes to the president. And right now, yesterday was a draw, and it's a tie. And so as long as there's a tie, Republicans are winning.
So you're saying I need an impeachment casino as well?
You need an impeachment
All right,
casino.
Steve. Exactly. They're Democrats, when you talk to on the Hill, Nancy Pelosi and others, here's what she said. She kind of changed the terminology. It's no longer quid pro quo. It clearly now, according to the speaker, is bribery.
The president has admitted to and says it's perfect. I said it's perfectly wrong. It's bribery.
I guess Sondland had stayed with his testimony that there was no quid pro quo. This is a sham and shouldn't be allowed.
What President Trump has done on the record makes what Nixon did look almost small.
Believe you me, this did not go anywhere like they dreamed it was going to go.
Democrats say they're building, but is that the case after day one?
I think it's the first inning. We still don't know a lot. I largely agree with some of what Marc said, but I don't think it was necessarily a day we would have expected blood to be drawn from the first day. And I think, you know, when you sort of look at this question, whether it's bribery, whether it is extortion, or whether it is a perfect phone call that's reasonable, what I was very surprised by was that no Republicans that I heard really made the case that if the president had engaged in this conversation and discussion in this sort of transactional moment, that it would have been okay. What they rather did is they approached, you didn't hear what you thought you heard, Ambassador Taylor, or you really didn't understand the dimensions, or it's not really solvent. So the Republicans are still leaving out there the possibility that they may come in and show that there was either a quid pro quo or some transaction, and that's a problem for Republicans, that there are a lot of witnesses yet to come on. So I will keep my chips back and hold back a little bit.
Exactly. I guess what it all comes down to, though, Susan, up on Capitol Hill, as it always does, is the math and the adding of the votes.
Well, it's a foregone conclusion now for a lot of people that impeachment will go through the House and then the conviction will not happen in the Senate. And then they'll move on from there. The only big questions now are the timing and who it will impact politically. And we don't know that. The polls just settle right where they have been at around 47, 48% pro-impeachment, and the other half doesn't want it. It's very partisan, too. It's the Democrats are for it, the Republicans are against it. I talked to members this week who said, you know, we're going to do impeachment. We've heard all we need to hear. I would look out for Monday's testimony by Gordon Sondland. He is the X factor here because he's been contested in his testimony. His lawyer tells me that on Monday we're going to hear a response to what these two employees claim they heard on the other side of that call.
And I mean, I think that is fascinating. First of all, that there's a call, 2 employees have heard it, it's in a restaurant on a cell phone with the President of the United States, and now we're going to get this guy, Sondland, under oath. I mean, that's
He may be in more trouble than the President, because he actually did something that violated
his comments,
security.
right? I mean, he's already done it once.
But look, here's if you want a sign of why how this is going in the Republicans' favor. A few weeks ago, the Senate Republicans were talking about how we're going to have a quick trial. We might even have a motion to dismiss right away. The Washington Post is reporting now that some Senate Republicans are talking about a lengthy impeachment trial beginning in January to scramble the Democratic presidential race. Nobody would be talking like that if they thought this was bad for them. I think Republicans
that has Mitch McConnell written all over it.
I think Republicans are starting to see that the impeachment is to 2020 what the Kavanaugh hearings were to 2018 for the Senate. That this could help them hold the Senate, because it's going to energize their base, and it could even help them hold the White House.
We'll say it's inning 1 to Steve's point, and we'll wait to pass judgment here on the panel. I want to turn to the political situation with Deval Patrick, the former Massachusetts governor, officially getting in this race.
I have been worried that we have this amazing moment where the appetite for solutions that meet the big challenges we have is right there, and I don't want to see us miss that chance.
When you see someone like Deval Patrick get in the presidential race today, no one nowhere is asking for one more candidate and asking for Deval Patrick to get in the race. I think it shows how desperate the Democrats are.
I mean, at this point, Steve, we were thinking that it was going to narrow. It's expanding.
We got Mike Bloomberg flirting, and we've got Deval Patrick, and I bet we see a couple of others before we get, right to a couple of weeks.
Where's the lane for Deval Patrick?
Barack Obama.
That's not Joe Biden?
No, I mean,
his former vice president?
I think it throws in. I don't think Deval Patrick would be getting into this race if he thought that President Obama and his franchise were fully embracing Joe Biden. So I think what it does is it throws into doubt where Barack Obama and all of the people around him are going. We know how close they are. So I think it divides at a minimum Obama land. To some degree. I think that's interesting. It doesn't necessarily give Deval Patrick a winning hand, and certainly it doesn't make it easy for him, but it throws into doubt because some people are feeling as if Vice President Biden is faltering.
As you look at the RCP average in the national Iowa and New Hampshire polls, and we've shown that Mayor Pete Buttigieg is rising.
Right.
One poll had him leading in Iowa, Susan. What does this do? Does Deval Patrick somehow take away from Biden and African-American support in South Carolina? Does it mix the race up? What happens?
Well, he could if he gets into those early races. But you know what? The satisfaction poll that came out with how many people are not satisfied with the number of candidates right now is about 28%. That's more than any of these candidates are earning right now in Iowa and New Hampshire. So, what does that tell you?
But wait a second. So you get Deval Patrick, Mike Bloomberg, Joe Biden, Mayor Pete, splitting kind of a moderate lane of voters. Mm-hmm. Does this not empower Elizabeth Warren?
Oh, it certainly does empower Elizabeth Warren. I mean, look, Joe Biden, he's making a run for the Obama voters, Deval Patrick is. Joe Biden right now has 41% of African-American support. Cory Booker and Kamala Harris, who might have made a claim to that, have not been able to chip away at that. Deval Patrick may be able to do that. What this is a cry for help. This is a cry for help from the Democratic establishment that is looking at this race and seeing Joe Biden is old and fragile and not ready to go up mano a mano with Donald Trump and the pummeling that he's going to get from Donald Trump and his machine. And they see Elizabeth Warren, who's embracing this far left agenda that gives no safe harbor to people who are suffering from Trump exhaustion. And so the Democrats see this race slipping away from them. They're desperate for somebody else to come in, the leadership of the Democratic Party, and they think Deval Patrick can grab that Obama lane, bring the African-American vote in the way Hillary couldn't. But
I mean,
we don't know if he can do it.
And Cory Booker couldn't either.
And Patrick needs what's his platform? Is he going to embrace a platform like Warren's? He's a two-term governor from Massachusetts. His popularity went like this in the state. He was not always popular. He needs a platform that's winnable, and that's the real problem with the Democratic
candidates. This is what makes Mike Bloomberg interesting, because Mike Bloomberg in the billionaire lane, if you want to say, is nonetheless
with Tom Steyer.
And you've got a lot of people that are supportive of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, and the editor-in-chief of Mother Jones and others saying, hey, what we don't need is another billionaire in the race. But to a lot of independents and a lot of I think the folks that Mark was talking about, you've got an interest in someone who's a pragmatic problem solver. And it would be interesting to see a former Republican become a Democratic candidate, and Donald Trump, a former Democrat, as a Republican president.
Well, who knows what next week may bring? Another candidate, we'll see. Next up, chaos, confusion, conflict in Latin America.